It is an absolute pleasure for me to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Ann Cashion. I would start out by saying that Dr. Cashion belongs to SNRS. Okay. She had a long history of involvement in SNRS when she was the professor and chair of the Department of Acute and Chronic Care in the College of Nursing at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis. So she really does come directly from us. We're very proud of that. She's currently the scientific director for the NINR Division of Intramural Research, and her own work has focused on genetic and genomic and environmental components, particularly related to transplant patients. And most recently, she's been looking at gene-environment interactions leading to obesity in recipients of kidney transplantation. Dr. Cashion really was on the leading edge of looking at gene-environment interactions, and her work has been just spectacularly important to nursing science. She has a number of awards. I would point out that she is on the board of directors for the Alumni Association of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Executive Nurse Fellows Program. She is a member of the Institute of Medicine Roundtable on Translating Genomics-Based Research for Health. She's a co-chair of the Genetics Expert Panel at the American Academy of Nursing, and she has received the International Society of Nursing and Genetics, or ISONG's Founder Award. And we are very pleased to welcome her to deliver our keynote address. Thank you.
What a lovely introduction, and it's such a privilege to be here. As Cindy was saying, it is, I've been a part of this organization for all of my scientific career, and it's been great. We actually, one of the first times that I was very much involved with this in the actual doing a meeting was when Katrina hit New Orleans, and we had to totally change where we were having the SNRS meeting, and we moved it to Memphis because my dean was president of SNRS at the time. So she volunteered us up, much to our amazement, because it is a lot of work that goes into putting this together, and especially when you do it on short notice. But it's a great organization. I've had the privilege of attending several of the other regionals. Most of you probably know there are 4 regionals out there. And I have, as scientific director, had the privilege of attending several of them. And it's been a very exciting time for nursing science, as I've seen the energy and enthusiasm that I see here at SNRS. Actually, also seen at all the other regionals as well. So it's definitely a time of growth, and we need to be proud of what we're doing as nurse scientists. Let's see. Oh, wait. It's all fine. Thank you. So this opportunity has been given to me, and it allowed me to put together some thoughts and my current thinking on nursing science, where I see our legacy, where I see the foundation, where I see opportunities for growth, and then a little bit of reflection on what we're currently doing. Those is where I am, part of what I'm going to be talking on today. So as an overview, I think we do have a rich and solid legacy. Most of the stories that I'm going to be talking about are going to emanate actually from my own experience, and they'll be my own stories. I say that because most of my experience has been in genomic science, and so I don't want anybody in the audience to go, oh my gosh, she's not talking about me. I think that my stories, or the principles behind my stories, apply to any type of nursing science. So if you're in community, if you are in pediatrics, if you're in psychology, you can put your own story on top of this, and I'm sure it's very similar, and you can find the linkages there. So what I'm going to be talking today is applicable to all of us within this room. So the uniqueness of nursing science is that nurse scientists are able to combine a knowledge of gaps in clinical practice because we've been raised within a clinical setting. Whether or not we ever practiced, we still are raised and steeped, and that's very much a part of our legacy, is the clinical practice. And because of our legacy in clinical practice, I find that almost every nurse scientist I talk to tends to interpret their findings with a clinical lens. They're always looking at how whatever they're studying affects patients and patient outcomes, patient health issues. So the uniqueness is related to our clinical practice and our clinical lens. And for example, I was a critical care nurse for 20 years before I even went back and got my PhD. So I'm one of the old schools that, got the PhD when I was older. And I will say that I'm very excited to see younger people getting a PhD because I do see the career trajectory. You have 30 years, 40 years to actually do a lot of the science. I think that's actually just going to build the foundation even so much richer than it's just going to make it richer. So, but going back to my story, as a critical care nurse, I was very involved in biologic data. So I did come to this with a real understanding and excitement for biology. But through the work in the intensive care units, I also recognized the importance of the family and the environment because they could significantly change the trajectory of my patient's outcome. So recognizing the interplay between the biology and the environment and the family was a very important part early in my career. So as my career continued, I actually was able to put one of the newer pieces of the biology, the genome and genetic information, and just make it part of what I was interested in. And that was an exciting opportunity for me. So I'm going to be talking about 4 legacy themes today. 4 legacy themes today. So the first one that I think is one of our strongest is that research questions for most nurse scientists are actually founded within clinical practice. And that's unique. And for those of you who may be in your doctoral program, you may not have had enough experience with other disciplines to recognize how unique and special that is. And that is, you need to value the fact that your questions will come out of your clinical practice and from your patients. The second piece that I think is a strong legacy for us is that we have almost always functioned in teams. And as science continues forward and as we expand the realm of science, we cannot function as an individual scientist in a one-room lab and work. And I think everyone is becoming aware of that. You are all probably very familiar with team science. My point is that nurses have been working in teams all of our existence, I would expect. And we have been working, and I can say, we work with a respiratory therapist, we work with a psychologist, we work with a counselor in the school systems, and we understand the importance of getting information from the different team members, and we understand the value. Again, I bring this up because I think sometimes we forget that we have that foundational understanding and that other disciplines may not have it. So while we value the team and are excited about the team, and we assume others value the team as much, that may not be the case. So go to the meetings understanding that others may not value the team and respect the team as much as you do. So bring that to the table when you are part of building your team. A third piece that is very important to us is that as we have our clinical practice, as we understand working dynamics of teams, We also bring to this a very structured and scholarly approach with our research design and methods. So that again, our legacy for that portion really probably began in other disciplines. Most of us are familiar that the shoulders that we stand on, many of them had degrees in physiology. They had a nursing degree, but then they got their PhD in physiology or psychology or anthropology. But they learned the research methods in other disciplines and brought it back to nursing. And from that, we developed our nursing programs. But we are a very scholarly discipline, and we need to also own that and be proud of what we bring in terms of research design and methods knowledge. And then this is one I have alluded to before, but I really wanted to bring it out here. Again, I'm not always sure that we appreciate our uniqueness at the ability to look at data, research data, and look at it from a clinical perspective, that we bring it a clinical lens to interpretation. I frequently work with biologists or bioinformatics or non-clinical disciplines, and sometimes I assume they're going to come to the same conclusion I do, and then in conversation becomes very apparent that they are limited in their knowledge to the discipline that they're coming from. So the biologist or the bioinformatician may be looking at specific pathways, but they're unable to relate that to a patient and their clinical situation. So again, it takes a team to bring all of this together. While I may not be able to really get down to the pathways, even though some of you may be able to do that, I may not have that expertise. But together we can come up with some applications, clinical applications, so that we can actually improve patient care, which is the ultimate goal. A biologist may just stop at the pathway, and then where we take it is to how does that make a difference? So I believe we're actually seeing a shift as nursing scientists are incorporating more biologic measures. Or biologic themes into their research. I know that this is something that's under discussion at a lot of the doctoral meetings, how much biology, how much statistics, what do we need to do? I am glad that they're very intelligent individuals who can help lead us in these directions, but I am seeing a shift in my own work and in the work of others. This particular slide comes from Janet Williams. She did a literature search to look at what nurses were publishing on from 2010 to 2015 in the area of genomics. And what she found when she reviewed almost 200 articles is that 60% of the articles were actually addressing the biologic plausibility of genes and kind of the genetic component. I was actually surprised by this. I thought that was a high percentage. She also saw that most of the publications were interdisciplinary in nature, which was exciting and not surprising. You can see that we obviously, and I always want to very clearly say that this is not a do this or do that. I think it's more like you can do all of the pieces of this pie can be done in one study. It may not all be in one publication. So, but keep in mind, you can do all of these things. Decision making was important, communication was important, and you can imagine in genetics when you're dealing with patient populations that they are all important. And self-management is another area that nurses particularly focus on. So next I'm going to be looking at strategies to develop a vibrant research program. I'll actually I'll personalize this section with some of the information that the strategies that I have used. So first I'd like to point out that on the right-hand side of this slide is a challenge. There are 900 Nobel laureates currently as of 2015, and I think we can be one. Someone out in this audience can be one, and I don't think that's necessarily on our radar, and so I'm just putting it there to challenge each and all of us and our students to consider that as an opportunity as well. So to develop a vibrant research program, I'll be talking about patient stories, funding, interdisciplinary teams, publishing, related areas of research. One of the things that my boss likes to talk a lot about is just do it and take advantage of opportunities. So the compelling story is generally a patient story, and I encourage everyone to use that. Mine has always been, in my research career, has been a transplant recipient. And for example, this one is Louisa, and it's a fictitious name. But Louisa, who's a 47-year-old transplant recipient, receives her transplant organ, and when she gets transplanted, she has a BMI of 27, which is basically a little overweight, but nothing significant. But during the first year, she gained 74 pounds. And this is not unusual. It's well documented in the literature. And there are multiple factors for why this occurs. And I have not solved this, unfortunately. Or maybe I'd be on that Nobel Prize list. So, and what happens because of this significant weight gain in solid organ transplant recipients, they actually end up with cardiovascular disease and obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and all the comorbidities that come with that. So that's the story, and that's where I begin on most of my presentations. It's nice that my story, or this story, is generalizable to the United States. I think most of us understand that obesity is an issue. When I was particularly doing this work, I was living in Memphis, which is the home of the obesity belt. So it again resonated with individuals there. I've had the opportunity to present internationally as well, and obesity is becoming a real problem internationally. A couple of, about 2 months ago, I actually presented in Korea, and you probably noticed Korea is the last one on that map. You know, I think everyone is going to have problems because I saw in Korea that they were actually doing some of the same things we are, and at every break I was given sugared foods and a lot of processed foods. So it is a national epidemic, international epidemic, global epidemic. So the point being that my story is universal, and it does help in many ways, and one of the ways it helps is to obtain funding. People can understand where you're coming from, and it helps kind of get you over that hump. I'm not here to talk about funding, and I will not talk about funding, but I can't talk about successful strategies without mentioning funding. These are some of the organizations, and neglected, and I should have put on there SNRS, because especially early in your career, it's the groups like SNRS that can make a difference. And those are the places that I started. And you build a funding resume by starting with groups that are there to help you. So again, I want to do a plug for the 30 for 30. I think it's wonderful, and it is very, very important to all of us. And the last point I would make here is that any funding is good funding, and do not hesitate to apply. So this slide is to talk about building interdisciplinary teams. My teams have been interdisciplinary from the very beginning. My mentor, who's actually in the room here, Donna Hathaway, had an interdisciplinary team going at that point in time, and so I was raised in that model. And so it's one of the things that I bring to appreciation of that I bring to the table. Otherwise, I would never have been able to do work with heart rate variability in end-stage renal disease and publish in this area. So building the team is very important. Publishing is very important. And people look at what you have published to determine if you have knowledge in specific areas. So be sure to publish with your team members as well, because that will help you show that you are publishing on that content area as well as with those individuals. And so that looks at sustainability of your team. Be sure, this is a big one, to publish on your research findings. When you are funded, be sure to present on your, be sure to do the study. Yeah, it helps. You know, the old saying is, you know, yay, I got funded, and darn, now I have to do it. You know, did I write it really doable? But hopefully you did, and you did the study, but publish on your findings, because it's not only beneficial to you, your funder looks to see if you are publishing on it, and you won't get funded again if you don't publish. So again, it goes to that the ability to sustain your work is dependent on publishing findings. And, you know, there's a home for every study. So, you know, if you have negative findings or unequivocal findings, find the right home, right journal for that work. Anyway, you can find it. Again, publish on your findings. This one's an interesting one to me. I put it in here because at one point in time I thought I may go into patenting a biomarker chip, and that was my goal 15 years ago, was to create a chip that would look at patient outcome or be able to evaluate and monitor patient outcomes. That was not the road I went down. It's very legal, it's very complicated, so I didn't go in that direction. But this publication actually put me into a position where I could have if that had been where I wanted to direct my energy levels. This paper actually shows, again, the need to build a team. There are 8 authors on this paper. Only 2 are nurse scientists, but it's the first author and the second author who are the nurse scientists. So keep it in mind that, again, I could have never done this work without the whole team. And it doesn't mean I don't want to do the work, it just means I need to get the right team in place in order to do this type of work. And it was with expression levels. It's all genomics, as can be seen by the graph there. And the other side of the story is they couldn't have done it without us, because we brought the clinical interpretation, we brought the design. So we all needed each other for that particular article. Again, looking at moving on to looking at the future, careers in research are long, or very short probably, but hopefully long, because it takes so long to do clinical research, and most of us do clinical research. So it just takes 5 years goes by very, very quickly. So keep in mind that as you're doing your research, that the science is changing. So be thoughtful and strategic about adding new variables in as you move forward year to year. Maybe you do an amendment or add another tool that comes out that wasn't there when you started. So just look toward the future and think about what else you can add so your research remains relevant over this period of time. There are barriers, there are facilitators so this is article that was published with one of my doctoral students, and she was interested in qualitative research, which is not something that I do. So we again had to get others to help us with the research, but it was interesting because it gave me another path to go down if I chose to go in that direction, with looking at qualitative work, looking at barriers and facilitators, and looking more at helping to design an intervention for the obesity issues within the transplant population. This work was done with a different school. So this is with the University of Memphis. They actually have our public health school there. And obviously, when you're working with weight gain and obesity, public health is a area that most people kind of go into, that public health realm. And so this particular student of mine, Robin Bloodworth, was working, actually she wasn't a student, she was a research assistant, because she enjoyed our type of research, the type of research nursing was doing. She went into public health, got her master's degree, and is now finishing up her PhD and in public health. But she was interested in food availability. So she took the data I had, combined it with other data, did GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems, which was kind of the new hot thing about 7 years ago. So I was excited to learn about it. And we were able to publish on that. And so again, it gave me other opportunities to go down a different road if that proved to be useful and beneficial. I tended, though, to stay with my genomic piece. This work, again, was published last year, and it's dealing with dopaminergic genetic contributions, and it is from a doctoral student that's now a postdoc with Yvette Conley and is going into a faculty position currently. And so this is some of the work that she actually used my samples that had been obtained probably about 4 years prior to the publication of this pub. The point I want to make here is that I've been fortunate to have federal funding. I think for those of you who have any type of funding, but specifically federal funding, I think it behooves us that we have an obligation to use our samples, our data, to use these as much as possible. Give your samples away. Let people use them. I see more people actually think, oh, I'm going to save them for something, and they wait too long, and they don't get used. So you have freezers full of samples, you have Excel sheets full of data. I don't know if y'all have done this, but you open an Excel sheet and you go, oh, what was that data? You just lose that momentum. Give your stuff away before the momentum is lost. Hopefully you've been fortunate enough to get funding, and it's your responsibility, once you obtain this, to actually give the data back and let others use it as well. And this is an example of that. We had no idea that we would be looking at this when we started the study, but the opportunity arose, and we did that. Speaking of opportunities, this is kind of more along the just do it. You never know what is going to propel your career in a certain way or change your trajectory. I attended the Summer Genetic Institute. I have a little red circle around my face there. Yes, I was a little younger. And this was the very first one in 2000. And when I was looking back at the pictures, I realized that Francis Collins, who is now, I guess, my boss's boss, and he's the director of the National Institutes of Health. So he was there giving a lecture. He's a very tall man. And you just kind of, it gave me the opportunity to reflect on how many small events over your career actually propel you or give you a trajectory in a certain area. And how exciting it can be just to take advantage of an opportunity that presents itself. Some other opportunities that have presented themselves, It was one that has already been mentioned, is the opportunity to become president of the International Society of Nurses and Genetics. And I was, many times, and I think many of you are aware of this, when you're given these opportunities, you kind of have to decide, oh my gosh, how am I going to fit that in? But recognize that it's usually more good comes of this than anything else. And so I do encourage people to be more open and responsive to the call of duty that each of you probably receive. Another wonderful opportunity that I had was the Robert Wood Johnson Nurse Executive Fellowship, and I always like to give a shout out to RWJ and what they have done for nurses and continue to do for nurses over the years. This is somewhat of a soapbox issue for me, sponsorship versus mentorship. I think nurses are excellent mentors. We have been steeped in how to mentor individuals, students, colleagues, and others. We are just moving into the realm of sponsorship. Sponsorship is more where I say, I'm going to help Kathy Smith, and I'm going to help Kathy Smith by talking to David Black and saying, Kathy should be on your board of directors for your hospital. You know, we need more nurses on the hospital board of directors. We need more nurses in many different ways, other boards. And so this is my plug for not just hoping that we get more nurses, but for those of you who maybe have contacts, individuals that you know, that you can strategically identify to them someone who would be an asset to their board or organization. CEO, I really believe nurses could be excellent CEOs of hospital systems. And sometimes we just don't think about that. Instead, we think of the CNO. But I think we have other opportunities out there. And this is the time for us to really make that push. And that's what my soapbox for sponsorship, because it takes an individual to help that. So in addition to mentorship and sponsorship, I found the use of existing and novel models to be invaluable resources to developing and growing research programs. Recently, Dr. Pat Grady, who's the director of the National Institutes of Nursing Research, and she and I published the National Institutes of Health Symptom Science model in Nursing Outlook. This is what the model looks like. It begins with the presentation of symptoms or a cluster of symptoms. The symptoms undergo phenotypic characterization. Biomarkers or symbology piece is added to that to give us some objective measures in that realm. And then the whole idea is to go toward the clinical applications. Our intramural program has a very symptom science focus, and I've had the opportunity to speak to several of you in the room, and it was very exciting to hear that many of you knew that. So that's exciting that we're getting out there more and that people are aware of the type of work we're doing within NINR's intramural program. I'm going to present just a little bit of teaser type information about four of our researchers. And anybody who is interested in this type of research is welcome to contact any of them. We're on the website, so you can certainly go look us up as well. Leo Saligan is conducting work in fatigue. So all of our work has a symptom focus to it. So Leo is working with fatigue, particularly in prostate cancer patients who receive radiation therapy. Leo, some of his more recent findings is showing that brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF, is actually declines when in individuals who have higher levels of fatigue. So right now he's looking at a model, a clinical proof of concept model, so that we can move some interventions into clinical trials. So it's a very exciting area of work, and combines the behavioral piece of measuring fatigue and the patient's perception of fatigue, because that's not an objective measure. So it's a perception measure, and then trying to correlate that with biologic measures, proteins. And also he has some mouse models and some other models that he's using. So this is Dr. Wendy Henderson, and Dr. Henderson has some very exciting research looking at stress in irritable bowel syndrome, and she's looking at the microbiome and how we can measure some of the bacteria through the microbiome and give that as a clue of what is going on with irritable bowel syndrome. So it is very exciting, and you can see each of these use the model that we have created as a team, basically. So she has developed the gastrointestinal pain pointer, so subjectively she's using that to help identify where the pain is, and the patient actually has to provide that type of information. And then she combines it with the genomic profile using some of the latest novel equipment. She uses a nanostring, which is looking at barcoding little mRNAs, which is amazing to me. You barcode something like that, but okay. And she has some treatments that she is considering. Dr. Jessica Gill has recently published on her work in traumatic brain injury. And she looks at insomnia and depression. She does a lot of phenotypic characterization through a variety of questionnaires, and then looks at differential gene expression, particularly interested in inflammation, and also interested in tau. And she's looking to move toward sleep restoration. This is what she published most recently in JAMA, and it's looking at tau proteins being much higher in military individuals who have had traumatic brain injuries. It's much higher in those who have had a number of TBIs. So this is one of the first publications showing that a history of multiple TBIs is biologically, you can show that it's related. The last one I'm going to mention today is Dr. Katie Mayur. Dr. Mayur works with congenital myopathies, specifically RYR1, and she wants, fatigue is an issue in this group, primarily they're pediatric children, and so she has been looking at, she has a clinical trial, which is very exciting. She actually has gotten some funding from the National Institute, from the Clinical Center, in order to conduct a clinical trial using a antioxidant to relieve some of the fatigue in these individuals. So they come, and she does a series of walking tests and and then a series of questionnaires on them to work with developing this incorporating this intervention into their program. So this study is moving forward. She already has about 30 patients in it, and we're very excited to see the work that she is doing and think it will make a difference. It's the first time there's been a study in this group of individuals, so it's very exciting to them as well. So where I'd like to conclude is talk a little bit about bridges and where we can build bridges. I think I'm trying to point out an example of a bridge that some people may not think of as a bridge for nursing science, but I certainly see it as one. So the Precision Medicine Initiative, most of y'all heard about the Precision Medicine Initiative? Yes? Okay. So it is an opportunity that is out in the public. There are RFAs out there for this, but it came into, it was being discussed at least a year, 18 months ago, because it's an opportunity that NIH is taking to try to individualize the treatment that patients are receiving. So this is a research opportunity, the outcome being that we can get more data so that we can tailor our protocols that we put patients on. Most of you in clinical practice know that in general, there is one protocol for each type of problem or each health condition that comes up. There's 1-2 protocols, but there's not a whole lot of tailoring that goes on. The two areas that Dr. Collins likes to point out that tailoring does occur is with eyeglasses, that when you need glasses, they don't just say, here's a pair of glasses. Like if you go in and say, oh, I've got a sore throat, they say, here's a prescription. But with glasses, you go in, you do, you know, I've had it done recently, and yeah, I kind of wonder what the right answer is every now and then when they're doing it. I'm like, oh, wait. But you go through a series of tailoring to get you the right prescription. Another one that is most people are very aware of is transfusions. We don't just, if we're going to give somebody blood, we just don't hang up blood. We very specifically test for the type of blood and, you know, O positive, O negative, whatever. So those are two examples of tailoring that we are very familiar with, but yet we very seldom tailor in other ways. And so this precision medicine initiative is there to help us come to gather more information to help us tailor healthcare treatments to individuals. And I think as nurses, that is something that we are constantly thinking about. And so I think it's very applicable to our profession. So why is the Precision Medicine Initiative, why could we do it now and not do it earlier? Dr. Collins likes to make the point that there's a lot of changes now that in terms of the cost of sequencing the human genome. So getting actual genetic data will help us tailor individual medications. I think many of us are familiar with pharmacogenomics and the possibilities that are there. So that's the fact that we can get this genetic information at a reduced cost is very, it's moved the science forward. I'd like to again just circle back around and point out that I don't think genetics is the cure-all. I think it's just one more biologic variable that, yes, we need to consider. So this is not like if we know people's genetics, we're going to be able to solve all the problems. The amount of time it takes to sequence a genome is much, you can do it a whole lot faster. And the other piece that they're wanting to include in this is lifestyle and giving reminders. So the fact that the number of smartphones and the use of smartphones has increased tremendously in the United States makes the PMI initiative more plausible at this point in time. And I know I've done some research in my own renal transplant recipients, and we were talking to them because I was putting together an intervention to decrease weight gain, and I was actually surprised, and this was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, about the number of individuals who had phones that did receive text messaging, did receive the information. They had ways to receive information through their phones to the percent. I think like 80% of them did, if not more. So it's amazing. That was my first understanding of how the smartphones have really could influence care in the United States. EHR adaption, it's up to 90%. Many of you probably remember, even though I don't think we're all happy about them, I've had lots of conversations about that, but it's there and it will continue to evolve and improve. And then computing power, so that's, we're talking there about just the big data, but not only the amount of data, but the analytics, which is the ability to analyze the data. So there are fortunately, some very smart people who are designing more ways to look at, hundreds of pieces of data and to come up with analytics and come up with some type of response for bringing that out. But my point, so those are the points that Dr. Collins usually makes, and this is one of his slides. So my point is this, but I'd like to add the other piece that I think is unique for nursing is that it takes somebody who can understand all of these pieces to lead a team that can move the PMI forward. So I think nurses can do that. I think that we can be the leaders, and because we understand each of these concepts, we may not be an expert in any one of them, but really no one is. So don't let anybody fool you. No one is. So you can do it just as well as anyone else. So it takes the ability to build partnerships, to build in collaborations, and to just be engaged in this area to move it forward. And so it's an opportunity, it's a bridge. And so how would it make a difference? Again, I'm going to bring it home to your own patients and why you would want to be interested in this area. So again, let me go back to my patient, which is the 47-year-old kidney transplant recipient. Currently, she would go to clinics after transplant. The clinics are run by nurse practitioners, so it is a very much nursing-focused event. And this particular patient and many others are placed on a specific protocol for 3 types of medication, and then we, depending on what comorbidities occur, we give them different medications for that. They see a dietitian once, twice, maybe. They see a couple of other types of professionals if needed, but it's fairly protocol driven. And so this person currently would, as I said, gain 74 pounds, became obese, type 2 diabetes resulted, and hypertension. So with the PMI initiative, the goal would be that 10 years from now, after the PMI has gathered some of this data, and the PMI is part of it is to have a national cohort of individuals, 1 million people that they are going to get data from. So let's say that this transplant recipient, Louisa, joined that national cohort and she was part of this study. She was, through this information and through the results of my studies and some of yours as well, she was identified at risk for weight gain. And because she was identified at risk for weight gain using very objective measures, the healthcare providers actually had some interventions that could be tailored to her. One of them could be looking at the microbiome. It's now being associated with weight gain. What bacteria you have in your GI tract may actually be more determinant of your weight than anything else. And so part of what they're talking about is fecal transplants. So maybe she would have an intervention done through understanding her microbiome. But probably what more of us are familiar with is lifestyle change through a smartphone app. And this is something, again, that nurses are very comfortable with, can design, can do studies in this area, and can also implement. And then pharmacogenomics. We can actually tailor her immunosuppression, but we don't know exactly how right now, so we do a kind of hit and miss. It works for some, doesn't work for others, and we're not really sure why. So as we learn more about genetics and environmental influences on immunosuppressants, we would be able to tailor this more specifically for her so that possibly she would not get the comorbidities. So those are some of the ways that can make a difference using the PMI initiative. I just use that as one bridge to the future. There are many bridges out there, and I encourage you to look for the bridges that are available to you and to move your own science forward. In summary, I would like to say that nurses can lead. They can lead the team, they can lead research programs, they can lead organizations, and they're ready. We are ready. And we have a rich clinical legacy which informs our research questions and our understanding and we understand that interdisciplinary teams are needed, and I do support that, team science, that bridges to the future are there. You just have to look. And in my perspective, the necessary skill set includes integrity, passion, tenacity. That's a big one. A sense of adventure. Anytime you feel challenged and you're losing your sense of adventure or your sense of fun, take a vacation. You know, walk away for a little while. See if you can reclaim that. You know, try to keep your energy level up. Troubleshooting skills are definitely necessary because, and you know, who does that better than nurses? We're always dealing with patients who have multiple troubles. So troubleshooting skills, the ability to laugh at yourself and laugh with others. And interestingly, many of these skills are found in good clinicians, and they're often keys to being a good scientist as well. So in conclusion, I'd like to challenge you to sponsor someone or ask someone to sponsor you. What is your REACH goal, and to see if it can be obtained. And you know, also realize that over time, REACH goals change. Because you change and you want something different. It's not that it was unattainable, it's just you've evolved and you're going in a different direction now. So thank you very much for having me, and wish you success at this convention, and I think it looks like it's such an exciting time. Thank you.